Okay, we're here in Cannes. The podcast is called Screaming Creativity. My name is Rob Reilly. I'm the Global Chief Creative Officer of WPP. I want to thank Spotify for letting us have their studio. Emily is here. She's right over there. Hi, Emily. Great job. My guest today is Manolo Arroyo. I said that right correctly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Perfect.
The Chief Marketing Officer of the Coca-Cola Company. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks for the invite.
So, Cannes, how many times have you been in Cannes? What's how many times now?
Fourth time. This is the fourth.
So, is this the first time or second time as the CMO?
Second.
Second. It's day one. It's Monday. We had a dinner last night with the lovely people from Snap. But what's your impression so far?
Overwhelmed by my agenda. It's going to be a fight to manage energy, but very inspiring. A lot of interesting discussions are going to happen. A lot of great engagements, and looking forward to a great week.
I see you've already had a meeting with Laurent this morning. Laurent Ezekiel, who is our Chief Growth Officer at WPP, but also runs the Coca-Cola business for us. And he seems to put a lot of meetings on your calendar for you. And we're going to work on that for him. We're going to work on that with him. But so how do you go from a boy growing up in a small town in Spain, then moving to Madrid, to being the CMO of arguably one of the most important companies in the history of the world? Not to make that too grand, but it's true.
So to make the story short, originally I was supposed to be a doctor. Until I discover I faint as soon as I see blood.
Myself included, yeah.
So that seemed not a good idea. And then I went to this journey of not being sure about what I wanted to do in life. And what I do enjoy is to learn about the world. I've always had a lot of passion for understanding humans, what moves them, what makes you feel. So as I didn't know exactly what to do, I decided to study 2 major degrees in the absence of clarity.
Two.
2
major degrees.
Wow. 2 major degrees.
I barely could finish one. So
it was 5 and 5, so 10 years concentrated in 6 years. It was only my last 4 months to finish the university when you get a lot of different companies coming over to present what the company is about. Most of my buddies went into the financial world, consulting, M&A, classical stuff. And then I found this CMO from P&G, Spain, that said, I have zero hopes with you guys because you're all going to go to make real big dollars. So at least I'm going to try to help you on how I would advise you to position yourself if you want to win that first race of landing a good job. And that's the day I got in love with marketing. I said, I found my place. And that's how it all started. Yeah. And I started in SC Johnson, then.
But there was a ski school or something. I think
there was
I've done the research. We've got smart people over at the corporation that have done the research.
Skiing was actually my very first passion. Obviously, back then it was a quite expensive sport. It really made me feel alive. I would find any opportunity to ski. There was a moment in which I was invited to the national team in Spain. I didn't join because I was so attached to my parents that I was required to live in the mountains for the whole year. So I started to race on a small team. To race on your own, not being part of the national team, it takes a lot of money.
Yeah, of course.
So then my father said, this is what I can afford up to this line. The rest you pay. And I was 15. So I joined my same club as a ski teacher at the age of 18. The other 3 folks and myself, we founded a ski school. And we end up having 200 teachers across the country and outside in France, in the Alps. So it's been a huge part. It still is.
Oh, yeah. So
it's my biggest passion.
Oh, wow.
By far. I'm a different person in the mountain.
Oh, wow.
I guess I'm addicted to adrenaline.
Yeah. So one of the questions that people have asked me to ask you was, obviously 2 years ago, there was a big pitch for the Coca-Cola business, and WPP emerges one of the main partners. What was it about WPP that swung it in our direction? Without putting you on the spot here.
No, you don't put me in a spot. I'm very open about this because it's the same story I share with Mark and Laurent, and then with the other large networks. One, without a doubt, the global reach of WPP is unparalleled. Second, the level of capability across many different disciplines and critical gaps that we have in the Coca-Cola company. Third, I think Mark did an extraordinary job of truly and deeply understanding what were our objectives. He was the only CEO that understood that we were going after one metric. And he made that metric his metric as well, and that of WPP. And when you have someone that says, I'm into this partnership and I'm ready to go as far as signing whatever you define as success for the Coca-Cola company, I'm in it. I mean, I can tell you now an insight that very few people know.
Yeah. That's what the cast is all about.
Our CFO told me, Manolo, how did you get these guys to commit and to sign such a commitment? And I said, sorry, John, I'm not that good. They propose it.
Yeah.
And I think that was a very important component. And I think fourth, there is obviously a chemistry component. There is a community of how you see creativity, how you see the power of ideas, how you see the role of data technology. But I think one of the big differences, I would say that the one that really at least touched my heart more on the emotional side, is I could see a team as opposed to other networks where you have only just a few individuals that are absolutely outstanding. You could see here that everyone in the whole team, it was clearly going to be someone that we could all at Coca-Cola learn from.
Yeah.
No matter the capability, all the top level of WP was so impressive, and it felt like a one single team.
Yeah.
And those are the components.
I remember meeting you very late in the process. And I remember going into it and say, oh, how do I help maybe close this? And I remember leaving after spending, a couple hours with you saying, like, I'd be really disappointed if we didn't win because I loved your vision of creativity and your passion for it. The podcast is called Screaming Creativity. This is the Festival of Creativity, and you have a goal to be the Marketer of the Year. It takes a commitment, saying it, and then how do you get there? And I think we're on a good path, and I think we have a lot of good work this year. Who knows what wins? It's Monday. We don't know. But, that level of commitment it takes, and I think how do we start at the top, but also how does it get down to all the people and all the people working, whether it's on the agency side, your side of Coca-Cola, and the partners we work with. We're called OpenX, and the reason why that's important, WPP OpenX, is we are open to working with new partners and doing different kinds of investments with companies, and how do we partner with even competitors sometimes, because I think that's what's best for Coca-Cola. But what do you think it's going to take to get to Marketer of the Year?
I think, to your point, we are in a good pathway.
Yeah.
I think balance expectations for this year. I think if we raise the bar substantially versus last year, which I have no doubt we will, it will be a first step. And then the real game for us will be next year and the following years. We're in a journey in which there are a lot of things in terms of basic infrastructure, I call it, and basic processes and systems in place to really address some of the gaps that we have had in the past. And I think you guys have been phenomenal in trying to help us to get there. Maybe not at the speed you would want.
Yeah.
But there is the level of excitement, the level of engagement, and particularly the level of inspiration that you can see and feel in absolutely everyone at Coca-Cola. I'm talking beyond the marketing community.
Yeah.
I'm talking across the whole leadership of the company, including our bottling partners. They are all right now in a place I haven't seen them in, at least that I know of, minimum a decade or more. Once you have that kind of mindset, it creates a virtuous circle whereby everyone is more ready to take higher and bolder risks. You and I have talked about, there's so many things that we have to address. When I started to see some of the briefings that our teams were delivering to your teams, it's like, I saw one of it, it was like 68 pages.
68 pages for one brief. We
That's,
won't mention the brand, but
that's the closest thing to the Bible, basically. Like, I prefer to say, okay, who did this?
Yeah.
I almost went there, and I was tempted to ask that individual, okay, you're going to write now 5,000 times. I will never write again a 68-page brief. But I think part of what we are trying to have is to come up with, call it persistent platforms, as you know better than me, of conceptual spaces that have the clarity, yet the space and the freedom to be able to create amazing content. And it's going to require basically patient, pushing each other, challenging each other, being very connected with what's out there in terms of what's happening in the streets today, and going for it. But I have no doubt because the beauty is that when you're in other sectors, in other industries, I recognize. I mean, I don't envy some of my peers and
Mm.
some of my colleagues. But when you work in beverages, particularly with a heartbeat in soft drinks,
Yeah.
it's a fun business.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Yeah.
all about music, sports, entertainment. It's about young people. It's really a fertile ground to create something really,
Yeah. Well,
really
let's
cool.
let's talk about that. You've obviously Coca-Cola been very involved with sports for a very long time, but really now music and how you're launching artists through Coke Studio, it feels really authentic, which I think is important. Authenticity is such a key component of
Mhm.
Coca-Cola. But why do you think you've been so successful moving into those areas like entertainment? We did the thing with Amazon last year, the series we did with Amazon with Gray and OpenX. That was very successful, the entertainment end of it. But the music part is really starting to blow up. You've got a great team there. So why do you think it's happening?
Some people say time is of essence,
Yeah,
and I think if continue to repeat the same thing and expecting different results is not
definition of insanity, right?
exactly is insanity, right? So an interesting fact that most of the audience probably don't know about us. Um, Close to 90% of our marketing assets investments
Mm.
up to 2019 were in sports, music, and all other passion points, which would include movie theater, going to the movies, or traveling, or gaming, would represent 10% or less. So we were basically in sports, and when you look into which sports are those, we're basically sports in the U.S., which mostly revolve around football and NASCAR, and outside of the U.S. was about
Football.
soccer,
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah. Of
called in the
course.
U.S.
Soccer player right here. So.
Exactly. So, and I think it's definitely a huge passion point. We have the advantage of having lived in person the power of something called the World Cup. I always invite the team to go, okay, why don't we rent a helicopter and you choose any stadium, any sport stadium in planet Earth, and we take a picture from the top. And then you see, tell me what's roughly speaking, the profile of the audience there. And you're going to see 35 plus males and 65, 70% of them, do you know what they're going to be drinking? Beer. Then you go home, and most of the audience that is ready to stay 90 minutes in a soccer match tends to be the same profile and tends to drink exactly the same liquid. So what's the point?
Mm.
And the point is that it's the only number one passion point, football or baseball or basketball for the most part. The only number one passion point for males 40 plus. So if you want to bring to soft drinks males 40 plus, go for it. But if you want to connect with Gen Z, the number one by far, but by a long way, is music.
Mm.
If you ask me, I've done the research. Let's call it Manolo's research.
Manolo's research.
Manolo's research, but it includes the archives of the Coca-Cola company. So going into the place and I'm starting to read materials, and a lot of it's online, not all of it, but 10% of it is digitized in our. When you look into the last 100 plus years of history of the brand Coca-Cola, there's only one thing that the top 20 markets in which the brand has achieved what we call iconic status have in common. It's not association with the sports or with movie theaters or even with meals. It's music.
Mm.
Every one of those 20 markets has made a commitment at some points of history, some in the 40s, some in the 60s. The 80s was big for us in music, that at least for a decade, creating unique content that would talk about human tensions that matter at that point of history in that community. So we're bringing that back
Mm.
in a
Great.
different and new way to engage with Gen Z.
Yeah. Well, probably the hottest topic of all of Cannes is going to be AI, right? So I have to ask you about it because I know Coke is deep into it, and we as WPP also very deep into it, and have great people behind it. How do you think creativity plays with AI? Right? There's a big debate. Is it going to replace humans? Going to replace us? Am I out of a job? Is this my last day? Today's my last day because of AI. What's your thought on that, and why is Coke so invested in it, and I think at the forefront of it?
So I'll make it short. For us, AI is about growth,
Mm.
about triggering and creating much more growth in our business because we can see that happening very easily thanks to AI. But second, I don't think you're going to be out of your job. The little I understand, and let me start by
Yeah.
saying upfront, there's much more that we don't know or don't even understand about AI than what we know of. So, with that context, what I've seen is that it's a phenomenal technology and tool to amplify human capabilities. But without a human having the right prompting,
Yeah.
forget it. So, if the prompting in is so so, I was when I use the SH word, the output will be the
Yeah.
same.
Yeah.
So I understand there's so much that we don't know. I come from a place that where, at least in my almost close to 30 years in marketing
Yeah.
experience, creativity comes from absolutely any source.
I like that.
Anything can inspire a human to create something unexpected, brutally surprising, and something magical.
Yeah.
And a
Good. I
large
like that.
and a large language model today is not even as wide as the power of the brain of one human.
Mm.
I'm not saying it's not possible into the future,
Yeah.
because I don't know. I'm not a technologist, but I don't see that happening in the near future. What I do see is that out of our own experience, this one of the experiments we did recently, create real magic, is
Yeah.
that it was fascinating to see that in 11 days, the first 4 or 5 days, like very few submissions happened. It's like, what's going on? Come on, it's on 5 days, only 6 days to go. And then suddenly we had an explosion. The curve just exploded. 120,000 submissions.
What was the reason? What do you think happened?
4 to 5 days in which a lot of those humans were learning.
Yeah.
It's a learning curve, but it's the
Yeah.
adoption curve of a new technology. So I think what we have ahead of us is the next stage, and you can define it as a new revolution, a new economic revolution, or phase two of the digital revolution.
Mm.
It doesn't is it is relevant, but at the end of the day, this is not a temporary fate that is just gonna come in and out. It's very different because you can actually see the benefits,
Yeah.
as opposed to NFTs, blockchain, which are
Yeah.
good things. But the difference here is that even if you are not a data engineer, you see the convenience of just, I don't need to go through 20 different pages after a search and then try to compile the
Yeah.
5 best things into
Yeah.
something that allows me to create it. It does that for me immediately. And we saw the power of bringing and connecting images and words together. We are months away from merging, collapsing videos, music, and voice. That makes a lot of people be afraid and have fear
Yeah.
for that. But I only see the growth part that I mentioned at the beginning, because I have almost no doubt that AI will have some degree of clear benefit on every one of the marketing pillars that we currently drive in the company. Some more than others. Pretty much is going to touch everything.
Yeah. Well, listen. I think for creators, for creative people, I think it's an incredible tool. What we've lost in the business a bit is the time and the money to experiment and fail. So for a designer and art director to test out images, or for writers to put some in prompting, maybe get some ideas to get it going. AI in the hands of the wrong people could be dangerous. But I feel I'm a moral leader. I feel you're a moral leader. And if the moral people, the more moral leaders we have, like, we'll figure out how to use it in a very positive, responsible way, which I think
Absolutely.
is important. So, what would Manolo tell a younger self? Is there anything you would do different in your career? Is there anything you would go back and say, watch this, or do more of this, do less of this? A lot of it. We have a lot of young people who work at WPP. A lot of young people at Coca-Cola will hear this. What's something you would tell a younger self that you'd want to change or keep doing? What's been this your secret?
I think if you ask me what I would try to differently if I go back, one is follow my instincts
Mm.
much faster. I always end up doing. Someone early in my career that told me you got phenomenal instincts, but you're also so data and scientific driven
Mm.
that you end up wasting months before moving forward. So that kind of risk taking, and I think throughout my career, I've learned to do that. I guess it comes from the natural insecurity that many of us have. You want to achieve so-called perfection, which doesn't exist. And I think a lot of times perfection is in your own instinct. So, follow it, go through it. And if you fail, that's fine. Get up and keep on going. And the second thing is,
sorry about that.
One, I think it's something maybe very early in the career. I understood that very quickly. Never be afraid or lose your job.
Yeah.
Just be afraid of getting into a job that is not meaningful. As I mentioned before, it comes also maybe from my skiing background. I'm addicted to adrenaline. And what that means in business is I'm not the kind of guy that likes to do just come into the business that is doing extraordinarily well and just keep it as it is. I love impossible challenges.
Yeah, I love that.
The more difficult, the more risky, the more fun.
Well, that's our jobs too, as people that are leading, both of our companies, is how do we remove the fear, and I think that fear is a debilitating thing for creativity.
Absolutely.
And maybe in the past it was something that motivated people, but I don't think so. I think it's up to us to make sure that people understand you can fail, you need to try, you're not going to get in trouble, you're not going to lose your job because you're trying to be bold. It has to be measured and intelligent. But I do think I love what you said. So we have a few more minutes, and I like to have the rapid fire part of the show here. So quick answers here: books or movies?
Movies.
Talking or texting?
Depending on the individual. My wife, I talk. Everyone else, I text. Wife and kids. Wife and kids.
Wife and kids. Night owl or a morning person?
Night owl. Like more than.
Well, you're in the right place, Ken. You'll be in the right place. We'll see Manolo at the Gutter Bar around 2 a.m. tonight, I'm sure. Last song you listened to?
We Will Get Through This.
Who's the
POS is electronic dance music.
Wow. Manolo, electronic dance music fan. That's a fact that no one probably knew.
I consume more than an hour and a half per day of that kind of music.
What's the reason? I mean, now I know these are rapid fire questions, but I need to know.
It allows me to manage my mood and my energy levels.
All right. Well, we're going to have a electronic music playlist, the Manolo electronic music playlist. We will be making it this week. That's going to be free of charge.
But it has to follow certain patterns, not anything. Then we can talk separately with the Spotify friends.
I like this. Hidden secret talent.
Identifying extraordinary talent.
I like that. Yeah, I think
people I can learn from. And people that will for sure go very far and that I want to learn from.
Yeah, well, we just hired Andrew Keller to lead our creative business.
Looking forward to
it. And he's here today. His first day is today, so let's be nice to him, but talk about a talent. Favorite season? Winter. It's got to be skiing.
Winter.
Yeah,
for sure.
If you could hang out with one fictional character, who would it be?
Iron Man.
Iron Man. Wow, I like that. I won't even ask why. I just like
the heart.
The heart. These are great. These are great questions, great answers. 3 items on your bucket list.
Northern Lights.
Mark's been there.
Machu Picchu. And I want to take my kids to a very special camp in South Africa.
Like a safari camp? Or
it's a kind of safari camp, yeah.
Go-to karaoke song. We know you like electronic music, but if you had to do a karaoke song, what would the song be? I would choose a Bon Jovi, Wanted Dead or Alive.
Probably something from U2, With or Without You.
Oh, With or Without You. Wow, that's a good one. Last one. If you had one app to choose that you could put on your phone for the rest of your life, what app would it be?
It's Instagram, because I'm very visual.
Good question.
I'm very
good
visual.
Yeah, good answer. Yeah, Instagram. I love Instagram. It's amazing how it's evolved.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think it's the way they're bringing the whole ecosystem around it. It's becoming more and more and more interesting. I don't think it's over for the rest. And the rest will diverge and converge strategically. But I think it's one that right now I'm watching very closely, but it has tremendous potential still further.
Well, this has been tremendous. We know you have to go. I think we both have to go. We're headed to a meeting, but I want to thank you for being part of this. This is the inaugural Can Spotify podcast, thanks to the Spotify team and thanks to the WPP team. This was being filmed. We're going to show this to many people, and probably the people at Meta now that you've given it really the stock price is going up for Meta now that you've given it the thumbs up. So thanks again. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Rob.
Got it.
Thank you.